And welcome into the end of your summer. I hate to put it that way, but this has really kind of become an end of summer tradition here at 98.5 The Sports Hub. One of my favorite traditions every year. Myself, Matt Dolloff, a couple years ago, when I was first starting here, and they're like, all right, I guess we got to try this kid on the air. When can we put him on? How about the night of Labor Day, Monday? We'll have him talk Patriots. It was Joe Murray with us on the first one. No more Joe. He now does the nights full time. But ever since that show, it's kind of become a tradition. Matt Dolloff, myself, we cover the Patriots for 98.5thesportshub.com. And we've been doing this every Labor Day Monday night for the last, I think, 4 years now. Looking ahead to the football season coming up. And, of course, tonight we will preview the 2024 Patriots. We'll touch on all of it. As McCarthy said to Felger there just a few minutes ago, we'll give you a little bit more of an in-depth breakdown. We're going to be Brandon Ayuk contract guaranteed money free for the next 2 hours. It's going to be a little more X's and O's, things like that.
We're going to break down the wide zone for 2 hours. How does that sound, Barth?
We might get into a little bit of that. But really just kind of take you through, I think, what are the big talking points for fans going into this football season and what people are looking forward to, what people are maybe wondering, maybe things people have questions about, things like that. And I want to start with the big picture here, Dolph. And if you people want to join us, by the way, you're tuning in, you want to join us, 617-779-0985. We're also on YouTube. If for some reason you want to see us, I mean, live your life, do what you want, but you can hear us on your radios as well. I want to start with the big picture here, Dolph. The first offseason of the post-Belichick era is in the books. The free agency, the draft, camp, all of it, it's done. The offseason, the team building, the setting the stage is behind us. How do you feel about the overall direction of the team coming out of the first Elliott Wolf, Gerard Mayo offseason?
Overall, Barth, I feel good, and it's only because of one person.
Okay.
And that would be Drake May, the number 3 overall pick in the draft. Possible future franchise quarterback for the Patriots. I think he looked great in the preseason. I think the physical talent is there. And this is where I'm coming from, Barth. A franchise quarterback can turn the whole thing around by himself. And so that's why I feel good about the overall direction of the team. Things could be a mess around Drake May, and it certainly feels like that's a possibility with the way, just the messaging is going on with the coaching staff and Gerard Mayo and all that. But a franchise quarterback can cover up a lot of things. He can make you a playoff team. If he's good enough, possibly even a Super Bowl contender all by himself. And I'm not saying that Drake May is going to be that guy right out of the gate, even next year, but I think he's got a chance to be that guy. And so that's why overall I feel good about the direction of the team, because if Drake May is that guy, you can almost forget about everything else. You can pencil him in as a good team just by having him. That being said, coaching-wise, I do not feel good.
Okay, so this is kind of more what I meant. You talked about Drake May, and I want to do Drake May, the next segment, kind of all of it, what he did this summer, looking ahead, what our expectations are for him. How I kind of want to start it before we even get to May. We already have people in the YouTube chat saying, yeah, enough about May. How do you feel about, you mentioned, like, if he becomes the guy, it doesn't matter what the situation is. But I would say it's a little bit of a chicken or the egg thing there. He's not going to have a chance to become the guy if the situation isn't good. There's been a lot of good quarterbacks, like true good quarterback prospects, who ended up lesser thans or even bust because they were put in bad situations. How do you feel about the situation Elliott Wolf has put Drake May in as a rookie, and specifically maybe the coaching staff he's given him?
Okay, I feel bad about that.
Okay.
I feel bad about the situation that Elliott Wolf has put the team in, and really, you can honestly boil that down to left tackle. I think their lack of investment at that position has a chance to torpedo not just the whole offense, but the whole season. And, bad offensive line can ruin an offense, but you look at this offensive line, David Andrews, good player.
Yep.
Sidy Sow, I think, has a chance to be a solid starting guard. Michael Wenu, very good player, especially if he's playing right guard.
Yep.
I think they have a chance to figure out right tackle, and especially if you have a good starting left tackle, you can figure out right tackle.
Yeah, Caden Wallace,
Chukwuefor. They could have figured out that spot between those two guys. But for them to point at those two guys and say one of those could make the transition to left tackle, we feel they can make the transition. We'll figure it out. They'll figure that part out. I think that's borderline negligent. I feel like they should have invested more in left tackle. And look, maybe it's too much to ask for them to get a left tackle via free agency or trade because you just can't get those guys that way. You pretty much have to get those guys in the draft. I think they could have gotten it in the draft. They could have been more aggressive in the draft. They could have spent that second-round pick on a left tackle instead of Jalen Polk. And I like Jalen Polk. But for this team in this situation, I think they had to get a left tackle higher in the draft, and they really didn't get a left tackle, I don't think. I think Caden Wallace, long-term, is right tackle. They could maybe make it work for one season if he could make the transition to left tackle, but I think long-term he's right tackle. I think the lack of a left tackle has a chance to ruin the entire season.
So I'm kind of with you. Like, I want to like a lot of what they did this offseason. You know, I like the addition of Drake May. I like the overall approach to the draft. I even like, you know, and this is going to come off as such a homer take, but I like that they tried to go get the big name wide receiver. Even if they couldn't, I like that they showed it. Just the change in approach signals to me, okay, they're in pursuit of this guy. They didn't get him this offseason. Obviously, that's not great. I'm not saying I'd give him an A for trying, but they hadn't even really tried in that regard in a long time. And ideally, once Drake May shows you something, it's going to be a little bit easier to land that guy because he's going to know that he has somebody to get him the football, right? There were reports that a big part of the reason Brandon Ayuk didn't sign here is because he didn't trust the quarterback situation. But just a failure to address the tackle position, Matt. It's such a weight. It's just such a cloud over everything else they did because it's been, I always say, I've covered this team for 7 years now. This is going to be my 7th season covering the Patriots.
Same.
I have never covered an offseason in which left tackle wasn't a need, which is kind of ridiculous. And they had Trent Brown there as a bridge guy at times, but it was like year to year. There was never really an answer at left tackle. Like, yes, this guy's going to be the cornerstone. It was supposed to be Isaiah Wynn at one point. Obviously, they used a first-round pick on him. Yeah. That didn't work out.
Isaiah Wynn should be the guy right now.
Right, but then they kept going back to bridge guys and bridge guys and bridge guys and on and on and on with Trent Brown. That's really the one thing that's kind of weighing on me. Besides that, I kind of like the setup. I don't even hate Alex Van Pelt. I know a lot of people are down on Alex Van Pelt. Was he the best guy available? No. Wasn't doing cartwheels when they signed him, but I don't think he's a bad hire. I think the big thing is he can develop quarterbacks. And we've seen both from Drake May and Joe Milton. And I only bring Joe Milton into it as a point of being it's not just a fluky thing with Drake May. You have a bigger sample size here. Both young quarterbacks look monumentally better mechanically right now than they did coming out of the draft.
Definitely.
And that's Alex Van Pelt. And that's not to say Van Pelt's going to be a hit. Maybe we find out, like, there's still the whole play calling element. Maybe we find out he can't call plays and whatever. Well, if that's the case in 2 years, Drake May is already fixed mechanically. Now you go out and get your play caller, or Van Pelt is a good play caller, and great, he's probably going to get hired somewhere as a head coach if that's the case. So Alex Van Pelt's not here for a long time one way or the other. Overall, I like the setup. I keep going back to left tackle. I wish they'd addressed it more.
Yeah, no, look, left tackle has been a need for at least 2 years. I know you said you'd never covered an offseason where it wasn't a need, but they at least had Trent Brown. Like, they at least had Trent Brown.
But it was always year to year, I'm saying.
He was year to year, but they at least had Isaiah Wynn. There was hope there. I feel like we're having the same conversation we had a year ago where it's like, are they going to get a left tackle at some point? Are they going to draft one? Are they going to try to sign someone? I feel like they didn't even try. It's almost like they didn't even try to sign a left tackle. They signed a cheap right tackle and said, yeah, we'll figure that out. We'll hire Scott Peters and he'll figure out that transition. Yeah, I think that one spot has a chance to ruin the whole thing. On Alex Van Pelt, yeah, my concern, like, I like that, it's a good sign that Drake May has made as much progress as he has. Yeah. So it's a good sign that behind the scenes, in some way, shape, or form, the development part is going well. When we get to Sunday, and Alex Van Pelt is calling plays on the sideline, is he going to be a guy that just, bangs his head against the wall and just runs the plays that he knows? Or is he going to be a guy that's going to be able to adjust over the course of a game? Is he going to be a guy that game plans specifically for the defense they're going against? Is he going to be that guy? Or is he going to be a guy that, well, this is my system, this is what we do, and that's not a guy that's not a recipe for success to have that sort of guy, because if you're going up against a smart, sophisticated defense that has game planned for you, like, I don't think you're going to have much success if you're just going to go out there and say, this is the plays, we're going to run them. So That would be my question for Van Pelt.
How do you feel big picture about the defensive setup?
I like DeMarcus Covington. I've liked him for a long time. I think he did a really good job with the defensive line as the defensive line coach over the past several years. And so I think he has a chance to be a good defensive coordinator. I have hope there. And I think Gerard Mayo, obviously a defensive guy, he's going to have his hand in that. So I still think the defense, you're talking about just the coaching staff on defense as far as the setup?
Yeah.
Because I feel personnel-wise, I feel like they still have enough to be pretty good. And yeah, I do like the coaching setup on the defensive side because I like DeMarcus Covenant. I have confidence in him as a coordinator. Alex Van Pelt has been bouncing around the league, and I know that Covington has never called plays before, but there's at least hope there that he's sort of a bright, young, forward-thinking type of defensive mind. And so maybe we see progress in the defensive side in terms of game planning and, executing a more aggressive style of defense is something different than what we've seen from Bill Belichick. There have been times where you wonder if Bill Belichick's defensive game planning is a little behind. There's other times where Bill Belichick might be missed in terms of defensive play calling, but I feel good about DeMarcus Covington overall.
All right, we're off and running here on the annual Labor Day Patriots season preview with Alex Barth and Matt Dolloff. If you want to join us, 617-779-0985. I'll keep an eye out in the YouTube comments as well. Maybe we get a good question or two in there. Kyle Fabrizio behind the glass with us as we take you through the next 2 hours up until 8 o'clock, touching on all things Patriots heading into the 2024 season. We'll go around the league as well in a little bit. I want to touch on some NFL stories, but we can't do a Patriot show and not talk about the quarterbacks. We're going to try. I know. I've been hearing this from fans. I've even been hearing it from other media people, how tiring the Drake May versus Jacoby Brissett talk has gotten. We got to talk about the quarterbacks, Matt, but I want to try to attack this with a new angle because it's been week one, starter. They're going to play week 2, and they're going to play week 3 and a week 4 and a week 5 and on and on and on, believe it or not, all the way up until week 18.
Allegedly.
Supposedly. So what are those games going to look like for the quarterbacks? For each quarterback, if he plays. Let's get into some quarterback projections. I think we've talked a lot about the depth chart. Let's actually talk about what we'll see when these guys step on the field. We'll do that next here on the Sports Hub Labor Day Patriots season preview.
Stay tuned for more Patriots Preview 2024 on the Sports.
877-MY-REHAB.
You're listening to Patriots Preview 2024 with Alex Barth and Matt Dolloff on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Maybe just rewinding until last Thursday, you showed us the courtesy to come out as you said you would. Thank you for doing that. You didn't have as much time for follow-up questions because you had meetings that day. But just how did you come to the decision?
Yeah, I mean, we had our process of, talking to the coaches, the coordinators, Elliot as well. That was part of the process. But what I would say is ultimately it was my decision to put who I think gives us the best chance to win football games. And hopefully you guys got it last week. We're 100% behind Jacoby. He can't think about what's in the rearview mirror. He has to be ready to drive this thing forward. And I made sure that he understood that he has the full support of not only his teammates, but also the organization for him to go out there and perform at the level that we know he can.
That was Gerard Mayo this morning, kind of touching on a little bit more his decision to name Drake May, Jacoby Brissett, starting quarterback of the Patriots. He gives us the better chance to win. What do you make of that comment, Dolph?
That Jacoby Brissett gives them the better chance to win?
Yeah.
I think it's possibly a reflection that Drake May, as good as he looked in the preseason, I've said this to you before, Barth, on Sports Hub Patriots podcast. Listen to that. Download that. Subscribe.
Sports Hub Patriots audio feed, wherever you get your podcast.
That we already knew that Drake May was very physically talented and more physically talented than Jacoby Brissett. Do we know that he's ready to face an NFL starting defense that has game planned against him and game planned against the full Patriots offense? I'm not sure he's ready for that yet. And that's okay. This is a 21-year-old player who barely ever played under center at North Carolina. And we could talk about the snapping problems that they had in the preseason. I think that will be less of a problem when David Andrews is in there. But some of those bad snaps I put on Drake May. So is he ready to even take a snap on a consistent basis? You can't have the quarterback putting the ball on the ground on the snap. And is he ready to make those same kinds of plays he made in the preseason, which were against second, third, fourth-string players that weren't specifically game planning that game? Basic defense. It's basic offense versus basic defense. Is he ready to make those same plays in a real game against a full starting defense that has game plan for him? I'm not sure that he's ready to do that yet, and I think it's fair to say that he isn't. And maybe he just needs a little more time to marinate behind the scenes and maybe watch a couple of these real games and get through the whole process of preparing and looking at the film and seeing what the different defenses do against Jacoby Brissett. I think that's all part of the process. And so I think right now, maybe Jacoby Brissett does give them a better chance to win because he's more ready for those mental processing aspects of the game.
I think along the same lines, if Drake May needs to learn this stuff, you don't throw him in the deep end. You allow him to work his way in. It makes him better in the long term. It gives him a better chance to win in the long term, which you've made this great take that I have been stealing on shows on this station and all over the place. And I've been giving you credit, but I have been stealing your take.
Oh, good. Steal it.
About sitting Drake May.
Yes.
So I'm actually going to let you give it for once instead of hearing me people talk about it being your take.
How can you hurt Drake May's development by sitting him? I think you can only help to take as much time as you need, give Drake May as much time as he needs to develop. I think you could definitely hurt Drake May's development by putting him in there too soon if he's not ready to face a starting defense, as I was just talking about. If he gets hurt behind this offensive line, and I know that's sort of related to the offensive line, not so much him, but I don't think it was part of the Bengals' plans to get Joe Burrow injured in his rookie season, And I know that Joe Burrow's not exactly apples to apples because he was the number one overall pick, clear number one, clearly going to start from day one, and this isn't quite that situation. But how do you hurt Drake May by sitting him? And the only possible argument I've heard against that is that he turns on the coaching staff. He starts to, sort of tune that out. Maybe he starts to get upset with the coaches for not putting him in there. If he's a franchise quarterback, he's going to handle this well. I don't know that he's really a franchise quarterback if he handles it that poorly to the fact that he starts resenting the coaching staff because he's not playing yet.
And I'd also say I don't think anybody expects him to sit for that long. So the comp I've made is The real damage you do is if you think of it as a business, not just as a football team. Fans are going to get annoyed. To which I would say, if Drake May's good, those fans will come back. If Drake May's not good, then you have bigger problems. Nobody's looking back on the Tom Brady era and saying, yeah, it was great, but they didn't play him in 2000, so I just can't buy in. We missed those 2 games in 2021 in 2001. So how great was the Brady era really that we missed that time, right? And if Drake May's good, he's going to be good. It's going to be fine. So we're both teams sit Drake May.
Yeah, if he's good, he's good. The argument, what? If he can play, he can play.
Right.
All the more reason to sit him. All the more reason to take as much
well,
time as you need before putting him in there.
He missed 5 games, 6 games at the beginning of the season. And think about what could happen if they had those games back. It's not going to be the difference between them winning and losing a Super Bowl. It's just not this year. I'm sorry. It's not.
Ryan M. says you could hurt his confidence by sitting him. You hurt him by sitting him because it hurts his confidence. If you hurt his confidence before he even takes a single snap in a real game, then he's not the guy.
He had bigger issues. So that being said, we both believe that Drake May should play at some point this year. If we get to Halloween and we're still not close to him starting, unless Jacoby Brissett's playing otherworldly, I would start to be worried because why isn't he, based on the progress he was making this summer, he should get there within a couple of months.
Yeah, look, there's no precedent for a pick this high in the draft to just not play at all as a rookie, and especially for this team that might need him at some point. And look, call me crazy, but I don't look at this coaching staff as, as forward-thinking as that, where we're going to set a new precedent by sitting the 3rd overall pick an entire season. I don't think that that's the case. So
what is the tipping point for you? At what point do you go from team, it's okay to sit Drake May, to, all right, it's time to get the kid in there?
If they're on a losing streak and the offense is struggling almost to the point that we saw last season or, the last 2 seasons with Mac Jones, if it looks that bad and they're just insisting on Brissett being the starting quarterback, I start to wonder. Why can't Drake May go in yet? If we're over 2 months into the season and they're insisting on Brissett and Drake May feels like he's not even close to getting in there, I start to wonder what's going on with the development.
So for me, it comes down to the locker room. Remember last year we would hear defensive players, and some of this was on the record, some of this was, putting 2 and 2 together. Some of it was more outright than others, but you would kind of hear defensive players basically be like, what more do you want us to do? Look at what we're doing. Look at what the offense is doing. It's frustrating that we're just getting left out like this. That's where you got to go to Drake May, because it's not about. Somebody said, well, if you bench him, you might, he'll lose confidence and he'll lose faith in the team. You can't have the entire team lose faith in the coaching staff because he won't go to Drake May, especially if he's out there looking good in practice. I've used Halloween as kind of an arbitrary cutoff. I think weeks 5 and 6 are the most realistic time to put him in there, and I'd like to see it by then. If you tell me it's the end of October, they wanted to take a little more time, fine, whatever, so be it. And I've said that you can't, once you make the decision, that's it. You're done. You can't bench Drake May. We just did this. You can't screw around the quarterback depth chart. Once he's the guy, pending injury, he's the guy. So you'd better be freaking sure once you make that switch.
That's I was going to ask you, what do you think if Jacoby Brissett has, say, a 3 or 4 week injury?
Yeah.
He tweaks his meniscus or something, and they say he's going to be out 2 to 4 weeks.
Yeah.
You put May in.
Well, they said today May's the backup quarterback, but no buffer quarterback.
But do you leave May in once Jacoby comes back? And Brissett's, he only had to miss a few weeks. Yet you got to keep May in there, right? I know you've been big on this. That once you put Drake May in there, you got to leave him in there. And I agree. That's how you hurt his confidence. That's right. That's a tale as old as time. You don't want to take him out after putting him in.
So if it's an injury, that is the reason he goes in. Unless it's an absolute disaster, you still can't bench him. And if he looks that bad, you have bigger problems because people are going to be more focused on how bad he looked than the fact you benched him. His confidence is already going to be shot by how bad he played more than the fact he gets benched. That's how bad he has to play for me to go away from him. Because once he's in, he's in. We can't do Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi again. Monday night against Chicago. How to ruin a quarterback 101. You can't do that again. Real quick before we wrap up this quarterback segment. As long as he is the starter, what are you expecting from Jacoby Brissett?
I expect him to be serviceable. The numbers will be solid. I don't think he's going to make the same kind of mistakes that he made, like with that end zone interception
in
the first preseason game. Like, I think he takes care of the ball, but I think there's going to be a lot of games, and this also happened over the previous 2 seasons. There's going to be a lot of games where it's sort of close in the end. I think the defense is going to keep a lot of games close. Is Jacoby Brissett going to make enough plays at the end of the game to actually win the game? I don't think he will. I think he's going to come up short, again, especially with the quarterbacks they're facing on the schedule. I think the opposing quarterbacks are going to make a few more plays than he is, and I think that's sort of why they're going to lose a lot of games. I think the people predicting, like 2-15, or they're going to be worse than they were last year, I think that sort of reflects on the coaching. And look, maybe the coaching is also going to be a mess, but don't tell me the quarterback play is going to be worse than last year.
Right.
I feel like by default you have to have better quarterback play, and that doesn't mean he's going to be good, but I think it should be 5 wins good. I think you should be able to grind out 5 wins with this team.
So I think when it comes to Jacoby Brissett, I do think he's going to surprise some people. That's more about, I think, the incredibly low expectations some people have for him more than his actual ability. He can sling the ball a little bit. He's going to be erratic at times. I think he'll limit the turnovers, but his accuracy was rough at the end of the summer. I think overall people are going to be surprised, but I don't think it's going to be enough to hold Drake May off for more than a month and a half, 2 months back. So that's quarterbacks. That's Drake May. I do want to talk about this rookie class as a whole beyond Drake May, because I know every year we say the draft is important. Oh, this is the most important draft, blah, 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 whatever. No, this one really matters. This is a really important rookie class, and I'll tell you what, Matt. This rookie class knows how important they are to this organization. We'll touch on that. Plus, you want to give us a call, 617-779-0985. It's Alex Barth and Matt Dolloff on the Labor Day Patriots season preview. Actually, we have headlines. Let's do that.
Sports Hub headlines.
That's what happens when you're used to working on the weekend. It's officially week 1 for the Patriots. They visit the Cincinnati Bengals to open their season on Sunday. Today, the team named its captains for the 2024 season. David Andrews, Dietrich Wise, and Juwan Bentley all return as multi-time captains. Andrews his 8th.
under pressure, stepping up. Hit as he throws downfield. It's caught by Polk. Snags it across the 45, 40-yard line, left sideline of Washington.
This is a really nice throw by May because he had to take something off it to make sure it gets over top the underneath defender. And it's a good drag from right to left by Polk. But Okorafor, gets beat on the left side. He senses it, slides up. He wasn't ready to throw yet, but then he sort of cradled that ball. Good directive throw on a 29-yarder to Polk.
Jalen Polk, also part of this rookie class. I kind of teased before the break there why this rookie class is so important, and I think Dan in Rhode Island is going to help me illustrate my point. Dan, what's up?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Hey.
Good job. Two examples real quick that kind of get overlooked for different reasons a little bit, but like Trey Lance, number 3, was never intended to play, but again, they were a good team and they had a better starter in place at that point. But more appropriately was Justin Herbert, who took number 6, who was supposed to sit as well. Tyrod Taylor is basically Jacoby Brissett. Now, it didn't work out that way, but there is precedent for someone taking this high with plans to sit. That's all I wanted to say. People just tend to forget that.
Okay, that's a good point. I thought he was going to say that Herbert stepping into a similar situation.
Yeah, I meant the full season.
Yeah.
Sitting the entire season is sort of unprecedented for a pick that high.
And Lance should have never been taken that high. Most people agreed on that, I think, at the time. So the point I thought he was going to make was the situation Herbert stepped into, which was Keenan Allen, All-Pro, Hunter Henry, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. Like, that team was loaded. That team had talent. Drake May stepping into a situation where the rookie class is going to be very important. So anytime you do one of these rebuilds, like the Patriots are doing, right, it's all about the draft. If you draft well, you'll be competitive. There are very few teams that draft well that aren't competitive. And for the Patriots, this draft is about setting the foundation for the Elliott Wolf, Gerard Mayo era. They kept all 8 picks. I don't think that's a mistake. I talked to some of these guys this week, and I wrote about it on 985thesportshub.com. They understand kind of what's at stake here, and they are supposed to be the new wave. And that goes beyond Drake May, who's obviously the face of the franchise and, it's future quarterback and all of that. But I think the idea is that all of these guys in next year's class are going to be the guys that this thing is built from. So I guess besides Drake May, which of the rookies interests you the most? Who are you most looking forward to watching? Who do you think is going to have the biggest impact?
I think the biggest impact this year, obviously Drake May is sort of his own
We just did Drake May, right? Like the rest, because I feel like the rest of the class gets overlooked when obviously Drake May is the most important, but like Jalen Polk hitting or Caden Wallace hitting has massive implications as well.
Yeah, no, to me it's Jalen Polk because I think Jalen Polk has the best chance to make an immediate impact. I think he was one of their arguably the most consistent Patriots wide receiver over the course of camp. I think all the other receivers were up and down. Tyquan Thornton, KJ Osborne.
Yeah.
Who am I forgetting?
Javon Baker.
Javon Baker. Like, they were all up and down, up and down, up and down. Pop Douglas had a good camp, but he was hurt
injured for a lot of it.
So Polk was the guy that was there every day, and he was basically the same guy every day, which was a good, solid receiver. And look, I don't think Jalen Polk is going to be a number 1 receiver. I think even if they're improved at wide receiver this year, which I think they are compared to the last few seasons, they still don't have that number 1 guy. To me, that's a luxury, and they might have to get another top 10 pick to land that guy or make a huge trade like they tried to do with Brandon Ayuk. So I think Jalen Polk can settle in as maybe a good number 2, but definitely a really good complementary receiver. And look, do you want to get a complimentary receiver, or do you want to get a better player than that in the second round? I think that is Jalen Polk's floor. I think his ceiling is a really good number 2 receiver that can rack up catches everything that's thrown his way, and is very productive that way. He might not be the big play guy that we're hoping for, but I think he's going to have a good, solid season. He made progress over the course of camp that he could start out of the gate, and I think he should start out of the gate. If he's not starting out of the gate, I'm wondering what they're doing there.
I wouldn't be surprised if KJ Osborne starts and like he's the veteran, he's on the field for the first play, but if he's splitting it 50-50 with Jalen Polk or even 40-60 and it's Polk on the field more after Osborne starts, I honestly don't care who starts at receiver. It's one play of a 60-play game. It's not like baseball.
Yeah, by start, I mean play the majority of the game. Be a main target, like a top 3 guy.
Right. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen from Polk, and I'm with you. Like, if he can be just Jacoby Myers and be that kind of intermittent slot threat,
I would hope a better than Jacoby Myers, but like that's sort of that type of
pretty good player. When he had like a almost 900-yard season.
Well, you've said a better Jacoby Myers is how you've described Jalen Polk.
Yeah,
he should be a better version of Jacoby Myers.
But I'm saying, like, if he can fill that role, I guess, right?
Yeah.
This offense is very big on levels. You have short, you have intermediate, you have deep. It's the way Alex Van Pelt runs it. Pop Douglas is your short receiver.
Literally.
Yeah, I didn't mean that to be mean. Jalen Polk is your intermediate receiver. And then player X, who they wanted to be Brandon Ayuk, and now maybe we turn our attention to DK Metcalf or T. Higgins, is your deep wide receiver. I think that's how you want to set it up. But if I could pick one of these guys besides Drake May to definitely hit, it would be Caden Wallace. Because if Caden Wallace hits, you have Caden Wallace at right tackle, Michael Winnow at right guard, David Andrews at center, and you'll have to find another center in a few years, but they can do that. Either Layden Robinson or City So at left guard. I think between one of those guys, you get a capable NFL starter. Maybe not an all-pro, but a capable NFL starter. Then you just have to find a left tackle, and that's so much easier said than done. But if you get a top 5 pick next year and it's Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks, now you have an offensive line, and you can build from there. So I'm really looking at Caden Wallace. I also just haven't been super impressed with Chuks Okorafor. I know that's not necessarily a secret. Anybody who's listened to me, especially since Sunday night.
I feel like you're understating that. Not super impressed is putting it lightly.
I would like to see Caden Wallace, just like you talked about Drake May. I'd like to see Caden Wallace start some games this year. I would like to see them give him a real chance to win that job at right tackle. The moving sides thing, we need to be done with that. And somebody's probably going to have to do it at some point. It's unrealistic to think Vidarian Lowe is going to give you 17 games. He might not even be healthy for week 1. But I'd like to see Caden Wallace get a chance to start at right tackle this year and show us what he can do. Because if he is a serviceable starter, it makes the picture a lot easier next offseason.
Yeah, I think Wallace is an indication that the staff is taking it slow with all the rookies. You know, it's not just Drake May. Drake May is the obvious one, the one that everybody's watching. But they've taken it slowly with all the rookies. It wasn't until a week or two ago that Jalen Polk started to mix in with the starters, even though, as I was saying, he was arguably their first or second best receiver, at least most consistent guy throughout camp. And so Wallace was a guy that got a chance. They gave him a quick look at left tackle for, it was only 3 practices, but it looked, honestly, it felt like they were starting to figure something out there. And then they pulled it back. They put Vidarian Lowe in at left tackle, and Caden Wallace can't even get in at right tackle. And so I wonder if he needs time to develop there, because especially if they're expecting him to move from right tackle to left tackle, which is easier said than done. But I would hope he can at least get in there at right tackle, especially like you said, Okorafor not playing well at all. You know, he had his head up his ass in that last preseason game, and I don't know that he's all of a sudden going to be locked in and playing his best football just because he's at right tackle. I just don't know that signing is going to work out. So I would hope that Wallace can go in at some point during the season. You know, it would be nice if he could figure out the left tackle thing, but he should at least get in there at right tackle.
All right, we covered most of the top half of the draft there. The back end guys, Marcellus Dial, Joe Milton, Jaheim Bell. Just one quick thought on any of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, Dial I expect to be inactive most weeks. He's the one guy that I was surprised to be even on the roster. And Milton, you know, he could be the emergency quarterback, so I guess technically he could have a chance. If we see Joe Milton on the field at any point this season, that we have a problem.
Yeah,
something's gone horribly wrong, or Joe Milton's the best quarterback of all time. You know, he's the next Tom. He's the next Tom Brady out of nowhere.
He just cannot be denied.
You know, I honestly hope we don't see Joe Milton. Jaheim Bell's a guy that he might be inactive a lot of weeks. They might go into certain games where all they need is the 2 tight ends with Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper. But maybe Bell can go in and maybe pop for a game here and there. I'm not expecting much out of Bell, even though he came on strong at the end of camp. Baker, I think he's a guy that could be inactive a lot of weeks. He could be a sort of a surprise inactive, a guy that you would hope could mix in, with a big play here and there. But I think we're starting to see, you know, especially with that thing the other night, maybe he's not fully locked in. He was severely up and down. He was making a big play and then disappearing. I don't think he has his details down. So I'm not expecting much out of Javon Baker this year either. Maybe he comes on strong in the second half of the year. All those guys, I'm not expecting much. Maybe Robinson gets in the second half of the year. But to me, it's all about those top 3 picks.
Just a quick thought on Bell. I actually hope he does play. I want to see how they build his rollout, a chance to get creative, a guy that is a similar profile to players that have had success with Alex Van Pelt. I hope we see a little bit of him, and I think he's a guy maybe we don't see a lot of at the start, but his role builds as the season goes on. So what is this offense going to look like? Big picture. We'll wrap up the offense. Move on to the defense next here. On until 8 o'clock, Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff on the Sports Hub Labor Day Patriots season preview.
Stay tuned for more Patriots Preview 2024.
your side of the ball. Let's take accountability for everything. Have an opinion on everything, which he has. And as the head coach, I feel like I always have a trump card if need be. Now, I do lean on the coaches. That's why you continue to see me bouncing around practice talking about fundamentals, because I do think those are very important. But at the same time, I have to have faith that I have the right guys in the building. So hopefully that kind of clears it up for you.
Here on the Sports Hub Labor Day Patriots preview, Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff. That was Gerard Mayo kind of talking about his approach to the offense to Alex Van Pelt, who will be running that unit, head coach of the offense. Spent a lot of time talking about individual players, Dolloff. What are your expectations for the Patriots offense this year, realistically?
I mean, realistically, slightly better than last year. And what does that even mean? They were 30? Were they 32nd in the league in points per game offensively?
I think they were 31st because the Giants completely fell apart at the end of the year. Yeah, they were 31st. They averaged 13.9 points per game last year.
Okay, so realistically, I think they're still, bottom 10. Even if they get better quarterback play and Jacoby Brissett stays healthy. And look, we never saw the full starting offense in the preseason. Hunter Henry didn't play at all in the preseason, and he might be their most important pass catcher. Is just a reliable target, red zone guy. Like, we haven't seen the full starting offense. And Jacoby Brissett, with just his familiarity with Alex Van Pelt, and, Ramondre Stevens is a great running back, and I do think they're going to be able to run the ball a little better than maybe people are expecting, especially up the middle with the interior of that offensive line. So I think they're going to run the ball a little better. I think they're going to get slightly better quarterback play than they did last year. But again, what does that mean? Do they go from 31st to 23rd, 24th? It's not going to be nearly good enough to win an appreciable amount of games, but I expect them to at least point at certain things and say we took a step forward from last year. And again, they were so bad last year that they could be 25th in the league and say that's a step forward. But I hope they can at least come out of this with things they can point to and say that we took a step forward and made progress.
So I think they will average at least 2 touchdowns a game, which again they didn't last year. 13.9. They're actually tied for 31st. They finished the same with the Giants.
How many points per game?
13.9.
Do people really think they're going to average 13 points a game with this? I really don't see them being that bad.
And then what was the one you gave if they move up to 25th?
Yeah.
So that would be 19.4 points per game.
Can they get to 19 friggin' points a game?
So for reference, last year, and this is very basic, but the defense averaged 21.5. Can they get close to 20? Can they get close to 20 points a game? If they do that, I think you feel pretty good about the direction. Now, next year we'll be talking about them getting to like 25 or 26 when we do the show again next year. So you can't stick at 20. But I do think they will be better. I don't know how much better, but the difference is the guys they did it with last year, Mac Jones, a guy they figured out pretty early on they didn't have a future with. Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster. One guy's out of the league. Another guy was cut midway through camp. The offensive line, Trent Brown was checked out. Now you're working with guys like Drake May, Jalen Polk, Pop Douglas, Caden Wallace, guys that are on the upswing, and you're building towards something. The thing was, what last year's offense looked like, there was really no room to move up because everybody was old or just kind of who they were. This year's offense is younger, and you can track it towards progress, assuming they show you something. You can track it towards progress. But I don't know. If they average 13.9 again, I'm going to come away pretty concerned. I'm going to come away pretty upset. I'm not saying they're going to be top half in the league, but
no,
they got to do better than 13.9.
People are saying that they're going to be worse than last year or even just as bad. What are you pointing to? How do you look at last year's offense and say this year's version of the offense is going to be just as bad?
To play devil's advocate, their 2 best tackles last year were Trent Brown and Connor McDermott. Neither of those guys, 2 best left tackles. Neither of those guys are on the team, and they didn't add anybody at that position. So you had your worst position. You lost your 2 best players at that position without any replacements.
Okay,
I think that's what people look at.
And that's to my point, but I don't think everyone says it that way. I don't think that's everybody's argument. That's sort of to my point.
That to me is what the argument would be.
That's sort of to my point where if they are just as bad or worse than they were last year, it's probably because of left tackle, both tackles, whatever you want to say. It's probably because of that particular spot in the lineup. Because I think in most other spots in the lineup, I don't think they got worse. I certainly don't think they got worse. I think you could argue that they got better. at just about every other spot in the lineup when you compare this year to last year. And so people might point to the schedule. I sort of just reject the schedule part of it because the NFL is just so unpredictable. And I think even this year's Patriots team should be able to steal a game or two in the division. And I don't know that they're actually better than those teams. It's not like last year's Patriots were better than the Bills. They beat the Bills last year.
Right.
That stuff just happens. And so I reject the schedule argument. I think the only thing you could point to is the offensive line, and you could just boil it down to the tackle spots. I think that's the only thing that's keeping them from improving on offense, even if it's only slightly.
So you're not going to like it when we go through the schedule then in a few segments. But we are going to do that. We'll take your calls as well, 617-779-0985. We're an hour in, though. We haven't talked about the defense. Let's do that next. 90 seconds, no commercials. Matt Dolloff's going to get you caught up with the Sports Hub headlines here on the annual Labor Day Patriots preview on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
From the Towns Fair Tire Studios, the Patriots.
Into the end zone.
Here.
Touchdown for the Patriots.
WBC FM and HD Boston 98.5 The Sports Hub, a Beasley Media Group station. Sports Hub headlines.
It's officially week 1 of the 2024 season for the Patriots. Gerard Mayo announced team captains today. David Andrews, Jawan Bentley, Jabril Peppers, Dietrich Wise, Joe Cardona takes over for Matthew Slater as special teams captain. Oh, and Gerard Mayo almost forgot. Starting quarterback Jacoby Brissett, also a team captain. Patriots face the Bengals on Sunday at Paycor Stadium. Jamar Chase did not practice as he and the Bengals negotiated a new contract. Zach Taylor described that situation as day-to-day. NFL news, 49ers placed rookie wide receiver Ricky Pearsall on the non-football injury list after he was shot in an attempted robbery on Saturday. Red Sox set to face the New York Mets tonight at Citi Field. First pitch 7:10. Your pitching matchup, Brian Bayo versus Luis Severino. BC football takes on Florida State at 7:30. Former Patriots offensive coordinator Bill O'Brien's BC debut. Sports Hub headlines are brought to you by Awaken 180. This September, make losing weight part of your new routine. Energy, clarity, better health. Find it all at Awaken 180. I'm Matt Dolloff on Boston's Home for Sports, 98.5 The Sports Hub. More headlines at 7:30.
Boston's best sports talk. There's an app for that. Download the Sports Hub app for loads of stuff. Absolutely free. Connect with the shows, get podcasts, and more. Get it where you get your apps. Or at 985sportshub.com. Now, more of Patriots Preview 2024 on the Sports Hub. Here are Alex Barth and Matt Dolloff.
All right, back here, hour 2 of the Sports Hub annual Labor Day Patriots season preview. Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff from 98.5thesportshub.com. If you missed any of the show, we will be posting it as a podcast. You can check that out on wherever you get your podcasts. Just search the Sports Hub Patriots audio feed. That's also where you can get the Sports Hub Patriots podcast, which we do twice a week here at 98.5 The Sports Hub. Matt and a number of other guests will join me. We'll talk Patriots throughout the season. All right, we spent the first whole hour doing offense. We should probably talk about the defense, too. That is half the football team. And this is where we got to bring back in Bill Belichick, because I think this is where his absence is going to be felt the most. Patriots would play a great quarterback or one of these young upstart offensive, brainchild coaches, and Bill would have something in the bag. That would always give him trouble. And I don't think it's going to be like a static level of missing Bill Belichick for the Patriots. And what I mean by that is I think there will be certain games you feel his absence more than others. And I think that's going to come on the defensive side of the ball. They also lost some talent. Matthew Judon traded. Christian Barmore dealing with the medical condition. Doesn't seem like we'll be seeing him anytime soon. Can this unit still be elite without Bill Belichick, without Matthew Judon, without Christian Barmore?
Elite? I don't think they're going to be elite.
Can they be top 10? Let me put it that way. Can they be top 10? They were last year. Oh, sorry. I'll just add the context. Without Judon or Christian Gonzalez, they're the 15th best defense in the league.
I think they could still be good because I'm still high on Christian Gonzalez.
Okay.
I know that Christian Gonzalez had sort of a slow start to camp, and you didn't have the best summer but I still think he's going to be a really good player. I think the talent's there, and I think the whole, talk about his personality and all that, I think that's sort of independent of how he plays on the field. I think it's all about just how he performs, and I'm still high on him, very high on Keon White. I think Keon White is going to take a step forward, so I think they're going to have two really good players there. And I said earlier in the show that I'm confident in DeMarcus Covington. I think he's a good, bright young defensive mind. I think he's going to be able to scheme up some stuff for them. But you make a good point about Bill Belichick and the young quarterbacks. If Bill were still here, we could go into this season on the defense saying, he might have a plan for C.J. Stroud. He might have a plan for Caleb Williams, Anthony Richardson, these young quarterbacks that they're going to face. Talented guys, but young and inexperienced. And Bill had a way of flummoxing these young quarterbacks. So I think that's a fair point. But I think on that same token, Barth,
yeah,
I think Bill Belichick's defense has always had trouble with the sort of new age offenses where you had a dual threat quarterback, the guy that could run and throw. I think he had trouble against Sean McVay's offenses at times. I think he started to struggle against these modern offenses, and I think DeMarcus Covington gives them a better shot at playing well against those sorts of offenses. That's where I think that they could sort of show improvement over Bill Belichick.
Maybe schematically, I'm worried about this team's ability to generate a pass rush. If there's one, I still like the corners. I'm not super worried about Christian Gonzalez. I'm a little more hesitant to say he'll take that jump to being a blue chip player, but I still think he can be a number one corner. They got good linebacker depth. Even on the interior, we know Devon Godshaw is a good player, and with the emergence of guys like Jeremiah Farms and Tristan Hill, who's on the practice squad, but I think will be back on the roster at some point during the season, they're good there. You lose Matthew Judon, who's your best pass rusher. Josh Uche, who's already dealing with an injury. 18 career sacks. 11 of them came in a 10-game span, or an 8-game span, I think it is, at the end of the 2022 season there when he went on that heater. So can he consistently give you a push? And then you're down to, and you're talking about guys like O'Shane Zimenez, who, at least at the linebacker situation, is kind of an unknown. They do have Keon White and Dietrich Wise up front, but those guys are more power rushers. Those aren't necessarily your pin your head back and go kind of rushers that you had with Judon. Now, Keon White could take a big jump, and Anthony Jennings too. I'd put him in that category. Keon White could take a big jump, but I don't see. I believe they can generate and scheme pressure on third downs and create pressure, and maybe create some sacks and pass specific situations. I don't see a great ability to generate pressure on first and second downs, and to be a really good defense, you have to be able to do that. Okay, well, yeah, but third down I put more weight on than first and second down as far as generating a pass rush. That's how you get off the field. But the problem is, when I say, I more mean situationally, they can generate a pass rush in obvious passing situations. If other teams can stay ahead of the sticks on you, right, and are in situations where 3rd and 3, you can pass or you can run. It's going to be a lot harder for them to do that while still being able to maintain their other assignments. Yeah, look, I think you can scheme up pressure in this league. I don't think you have to have that singular dominant pass rusher, and they didn't have Matthew Judon for most of the season last year, and they still played well. But, Christian Barmore is the big one. That's the big loss. That can they overcome that? And so that's where they're going to need Keon White to sort of step up and be that guy and be a true impact player. I think he can be. I think the power's there. I think the explosion is there. And so I think he is going to be a guy that teams have to plan for. And so you have to plan around him. And I think he's a guy that, maybe he over pursues on certain plays where you can run on him. But I think if you're passing on first down and you have Keon White coming at you, I think he's going to make an impact. I really do. And I'm high on Anthony Jennings. You know this. Yeah. I'm a big Anthony Jennings guy. I think he's a guy that's had trouble getting into the lineup just because of the depth chart and guys that he's been behind. He's been the next guy up whenever Judon hasn't been out there. He's played that Judon role. I'm not saying he's going to be Matthew Judon, but I think they're going to get more out of Anthony Jennings this year than they have in seasons past. So I think that gets to an important point. If this defense is going to be better, you're talking about internal growth of younger players. And the two among them, Christian Gonzalez and Keon White. If you want to put Anthony Jennings and Joshua Uche in that category, they're a little bit older. But if this defense is going to be good, those guys need to be better than they've been. And it's not like, okay, 1 or 2 can be better. All 4 of those guys need to be better than they've been. If that happens, I do think they have a chance to be a top 10 defense. If Christian Gonzalez really is the guy we saw for the first 4 weeks last year. And Keion White takes this big year 2 jump, and he doesn't even need to be like a big sack guy. Here's the thing with Keion White. Keion White's a disruptor. His job is to create chaos in the backfield. Somebody comes in on the other side and cleans that up and gets the sack. And that's where you look at a guy like Josh Uche. But if Keion White can be like a multi-pressure a game guy, like a 5, 6, 7 pressure a game guy, and you have Joshua Uche staying healthy and Anthony Jennings on the other side there cleaning those up, and you get that level of play for Christian Gonzalez, well, then you have the presence on the interior in Devon Godshaw. You have a strong secondary around Gonzalez. You have very good safeties. Now you have a chance. But we just went through a lot of what-ifs, and that's what makes me nervous.
It is a lot of what. There's a lot of what-ifs up and down the lineup and on the coaching staff, and so I think it's fair to be worried about the whole thing because there's a lot of new faces, whether it's players, coaches, whatever. I personally have confidence in those new faces on the defensive side of the ball, players and coaches, and so it sounds like I'm a lot higher on the defense than you are, Barth.
It's not that I'm like I still think they'll be good. I still think they'll be in the top half of the league. I think somewhere around 15th is about right. But before the season, when they had this is what makes it so tough. When they had Judon and they had Barmore, I thought they had a chance to be a top 10 unit. And now it's just kind of readjusting those expectations for a team that, if they're going to be competitive, was going to have to lean on the defense to do so. I just don't know that they're that kind of unit anymore without those two guys.
Yeah, leaning on the defense, that might be a bit of a tall order. But if Christian Gonzalez does take that big step forward, he's shutting down other teams' number one receivers. They can't even throw in his direction. That makes all the difference in the world.
It changes a lot.
I think there's the potential that could happen.
And then, sorry, just lost my train of thought there.
That's okay.
The other thing that I think is going to be big, and this goes to complementary football, right? The Patriots last year defensively had the worst starting field position in the league. What I mean by that was the defense was put in more unfavorable positions. The defense started on average on their own 32-yard line. So that means take a touchback, add 7 yards. That's where the defense was starting on average. A lot of that's due to touchbacks, turnovers, and then there's some bad special teams play in there as well that's set up short fields. They also played among the most plays of any defense in the NFL last year. Because, again, turnovers. The offense has to help the defense out. That's the other part of this. I do think the defense does get a boost if the offense does a better job of taking care of the football. And that's the one thing with Jacoby Brissett. He doesn't turn the ball over as much. So that could be another spot for internal growth, too, is maybe the offense gets some help or the defense gets some help just not being in bad situations.
That was part of the reason that they were so bad and bottomed out last year, is that they started losing the field position battle. And that was the one thing that even in 2020 and even like 2021, 2022, when they didn't have quite the talent level on offense to win a lot of games or, be as good as we want them to be, they would at least have good field position. But, the last 2 years is where even the special teams units deteriorated, and obviously Mac Jones with all those turnovers. I just don't see Jacoby Brissett making those kinds of turnovers. I think Jacoby Brissett's problem is going to be he's not going to make enough plays. He's not going to make enough big plays to actually win the game in the end. But I don't think he's going to put the defense in bad spots where he's turning the ball over at his own 30-yard line or anything like that. I think we're going to see less of that, and so I think it's going to be less stress in the defense, and I think that's going to lead to the defense being better.
Give me a quick thought on the special teams.
People were clamoring that they wanted a bright young offensive coach. They might have gotten it with the special teams coordinator, Jeremy Springer. That's a McVay guy,
Yeah.
The special teams units looked good. The return units looked good. And so the weird part is I thought Jalen Reagor looked really good as a returner, but now he's on the practice squad, so I don't know how much of an impact he's going to have as a returner. Maybe they've just been sort of preserving Marcus Jones, and now they're going to deploy him in that role. So I expect the special teams to be better. That was one thing that, look, I get that why people don't talk about it that much. It's not as important as offense or defense, obviously. But the blocked punts, the erratic field goal kicking, I feel like we're going to see a lot less of that as well. And so I think they'll have improvement on the margins in that area of the game. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to have on wins and losses, but I think special teams, they're definitely going to be better than they were over the last couple of years.
All right, you want to join us, 617-779-0985. Now is the time to call in here on the annual Sports Hub Labor Day Patriots season preview. We'll take a look at the schedule next. It's Alex Barth and Matt Dolloff taking you up until 8 o'clock.
You're listening to Patriots Preview 2024 on the Sports Hub.
not just a podcast you're subscribing to, but just a whole bunch of good Patriots content over the course of the 17-game, 18-week season. Let's take a look at this thing, Dolph, shall we? And I know you said you don't care too much about the schedule, but a couple things that stand out about the schedule.
Well, quickly,
yeah.
It's really the preseason schedule. I don't believe in like before the season even starts. Oh, the schedule's so hard. There's no way they beat Seattle week 2. Like I don't understand that line of thinking.
In the sense that it's the NFL, it's week to week, things change.
Week to week, things change. Obviously, injuries, but the league is just so unpredictable. Who thought the Texans were going to be a playoff team going into last season? That whole sort of thing.
Right. No, I would agree with you. Look, week 1, the Bengals may already be without Jamar Chase, as you said in your update there. There's issues with his contract in Cincinnati, and
they start slow. Week 1 is as unpredictable as anything. Look, you make me pick the game, I pick the Bengals, but I think that one's going to be closer than people think.
So a couple things that stand out about the schedule to me, though, that we can surmise right now. One, not going to be watching a lot of Red Zone, Patriots fans, unless you have 2 TVs. A lot of 1 o'clock games. All but 4 are 1 o'clock games. So they have the Thursday night against the Jets. They have the game in London. And then there are 2 games on the West Coast at the Niners and at the Cardinals. It's the Niners are week 4. The Cardinals are week 15. Those are your typical West Coast 4 o'clock, 1 o'clock local start times. Besides that, it's all 1 o'clock games. I guess the last 2 games are TBD, but those will be Sunday at 1 o'clock. So it's kind of stagnated home on the road. 3 of the first 4 on the road. I kind of like that.
Get it out of the way?
I kind of like that. Get it out of the way. There's some tough teams in there, too. Get all that out of the way. The past couple years, it's felt like, and these stretches were different lengths, but they would have a hard start. There'd be like a soft spot in the middle, and then they'd get hard again at the end. I think it was the last 3 years. That's essentially what the Patriots schedule was. This year, it just feels like it gets somewhat progressively easier. We'll see what the Bills are at the end of the year. Those games may not matter, but I mean, starting in November, the Titans could be bad. The Bears, we'll see, but it's a rookie quarterback. The Rams, Stafford is going to be out at that point. Jimmy Garoppolo is probably going to be out at that point. You're facing Stetson Bennett. At Miami's tough. Colts could go either way. Cardinals might get the first overall pick. That team's not good. And you have the Bills twice in the last 2 weeks, and you have the Chargers coming here, which if there's one game the Patriots are going to win, if I had to pick one game and tell you I am betting on the Patriots in that game, it is Week 17 against the Chargers, because the Patriots have been a nightmare spot for Justin Herbert, an LA team coming up to New England the last week in December, and you know the weather's going to suck, just like it did last year. It wasn't even snowing. It wasn't even raining. It was just dropping gross out of the sky.
That was disgusting.
It's like 40 degrees. That was terrible.
Everything about that day was disgusting.
That's the game. Yeah, what was it, like 6-3 or something?
6-0.
6-0. I remember telling friends, I had a friend who had season tickets, and he went, and he was like, I can't believe I sat through that. I remember telling him, when they get good again, this is the game to point to show what a good fan you are. When they get good again, everybody who was at that game gets a chance to say, I was there. 6-0 against the Chargers with Bailey Zappi when it was pouring slush and 40 degrees and windy. I was there. I deserve this. That's what that game was. I would not be surprised if this Chargers game is the same thing. I actually think that's the most winnable game on their schedule, Matt.
The most winnable game on the schedule, or the Chargers.
The game I would most pick them to win. Like, if you were to tell me, pick one game they're going to win, it's that one.
You get a good ROI on that one because of, on paper, it feels like the Chargers have the better team and the better quarterback and all that. So I think that's fair. Yeah, I'm not picking the Patriots to win that game. I'm trying to find a path to 5 wins, Barth, because like I've said, I've noted on this show and other shows, if they get to 5 wins, they can at least sell to the team, sell to us, sell to the fans that they made some progress. They took a slight step forward from last year, the slight improvement. I'm not saying you need to be happy about 5 wins, but don't tell me it's going to be the same or worse than last year, just in terms of the wins and losses. So going over the schedule, I think it's going to be a rough first half, and like you said, it's going to get easier in the second half. I got the wins over the Cardinals, Colts, Titans, and they steal 2 division games.
Okay.
Pick whatever games you want. And like I said, I try not to get too bogged down in the minutia of the schedule, even though we're doing that at this very moment.
It's a season preview show. We got to go through the schedule.
The Jets 3 years ago are the last team in the entire league to go 0-6 in the division. So I think if you're predicting if you're just declaring they're going to go 0-6 in the division, okay, I guess they're just as bad as the Jets. Maybe they are. I know there's some people that think they might be that bad, but I just don't think I think realistically they're going to steal one game, maybe two games out of the division, whether it's at home or whatever. Again, they beat the Bills last year, even though they had the worst offense I've ever seen in my life. So anything can happen any given Sunday, and I just hope that they can get to 5 wins, and that I think those are the most realistic. That's the most realistic path to me.
I will say, if you're a division thing too, Buffalo Week 18, the Bills might have everything locked up. Drake May's trying to end the rookie season on a high note.
That's what we call a fake win.
That could be. Remember when the Patriots went to Buffalo and Brady played the first 3 drives? It was at the end of the 16 season, I think.
And Garoppolo went in.
Yeah, that could be that. So it's a win in the standings. And people are going to get all pissed off because of the draft pick or whatever. But I that's kind of my takeaway on the schedule. It starts hard, it gets easier, more home games at the end. I miss the days when we could really break it down, though. It just doesn't feel that this season is bigger than week to week. This season is about, do you show any sign of progress? Specifically when it comes to Drake May. Can Drake May give you something that you can show to free agents, basically say, this is the guy we want to put you with, and they'll be enticed to come here? Can Drake May show you enough that you're comfortable starting to trade draft picks and hand out big contracts to put peace around them, because we're not going to have to rebuild anytime soon. This is the guy. That's what the season is all about. Even if Drake May doesn't start right away, I think he has a chance to do that. He doesn't even need to win Rookie of the Year. He just has to show flashes. Show flashes. I go back to the Javon Baker drop in week 2 of the preseason. Plays like that. And even if it's dropped, you take that to DK Metcalf, you show him that and say, look at this throw he made. You catch that. You probably catch that standing up and walk in for a touchdown.
Right.
But this is what we want to put you in, because, again, it goes back to Brandon Ayuk. He had no faith in the quarterback situation here, and I kind of don't blame him, because Jacoby Brissett's transitionary. He's not here for the long term. And Drake May's a total unknown to NFL players. I like what I've seen in the preseason. You can like what you've seen, but the reality is he's an unknown. The early returns look good, the very, 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 very early returns, but he's an unknown. And the goal for this season, to me, is for Drake May to prove he's not an unknown.
Right. I think either way, no matter how it shakes out, by the end of the season, you're looking at 5-6 wins at the absolute best. Everything goes as well as possible. You're still looking at 5 or 6 wins. So I think you have to look for progress from the young players, whether that's first-year players, second-year players, even third-year players. Tyquan Thornton. Can Tyquan Thornton finally be a regular contributor to this offense?
They're trying to make him one.
They're really trying to make Tyquan Thornton happen. We'll see. But, if they come out of the season, nobody's going to be happy about 5 wins. But if Drake May goes in and he does show those flashes, he shows some promises, maybe wins you a game or 2 down the stretch where you come out of that game saying Drake May won you that game. He made plays at the end to win the game. You start to feel a lot better about the future. The needle starts to point up, and you can come out of that season, even though they won 5 games, saying, all right, we're building something. There's progress.
I mean, people will point to the Lions a couple years ago who won, I think, 6 games or something, but they won 2 of their last 4. And they just had all this momentum and took it into the next season and started building off of that. And just that's another big one for me. End on a high note. And I that doesn't necessarily mean beat the Bills in Week 18, right? It doesn't necessarily mean beat the Bills in Week 18, but just this team really going back to, 2018, even that year they won the Super Bowl. After Thanksgiving, they fell off. And they picked it up again in the playoffs, but they did not. We thought it was over. Remember the loss in Pittsburgh, the miracle in Miami, and the loss in Pittsburgh, and this is over. This is the dynasty. This is it.
They sort of backed into the divisional round.
Right. They backed into the playoffs. Then they figured out, all right, we're just going to run the ball down everybody's throat. It was awesome.
And they played the Chargers.
The Chargers, right here, and it was a mess. 2019, they struggled down the stretch. 2020 was kind of a struggle across the board. 21, 22, both years they fell apart at the end of the season. And last year, again, was kind of a mess across the board. But can you play your best football in December? And that doesn't even have to mean going 4-0. It might be 1 win. But if you look like a better team in December than you did in October. I think that's a win for where the Patriots are at right now.
Yeah, and to your point, they come out of that December game against the Chargers. Drake May's in there. He outduels Justin Herbert. He's been compared to Justin Herbert a lot. He comes out of there and he plays better than Justin Herbert, makes a few more plays, and they win the game because Drake May, led them to that point. Even if it's just to get to 5-11 on the season, you start to feel better about the future because this year is really about the future. It's not about the present. And Drake May coming in and playing well down the stretch and, stealing them a game or two in December can sort of change the whole conversation about the future of this team.
617-779-0985. You want to join the conversation? 2 segments left here on the annual Sports Hub Patriots season preview. I do want to get into some around the NFL stuff. We'll do that next. Matt Dolloff, though, has your headlines here on 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Sports Hub headlines.
It's officially week 1 of the 2024 season for the Patriots. Gerard Mayo announced team captains today. David
is the Sports Hub Patriots Labor Day preview. Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff with you here up until 8 o'clock on 98.5 The Sports Hub. We've been talking mostly all Patriots. Again, you want to join us, 617-779-0985. You miss any of the show, it will be up in podcast form on the Sports Hub Patriots audio feed. That's also where you can find the Sports Hub Patriots podcast, which will be, the goal is twice a week during the regular season. Matt and I will do a recap on Mondays. I'll be out Monday afternoon, and then I'll have some sort of game preview or other notable something, usually with a guest, on Thursdays. But I do want to just kind of talk about the league as a whole, because I think a lot of Patriots fans are like, I'm not really looking forward to Patriots season or to football season. And I get that with the Patriots being what they are, but this is actually shaping up to be a pretty interesting NFL season, Matt. So Patriots aside, do you have any one storyline maybe that you're like really looking forward to watching this season?
If I had to pick one, like a lot of the storylines that I wrote down for the season are AFC centric, and a lot of it involves teams that the Patriots are playing this year because, look, I'm trying to find hope for this Patriots season that it's going to be better than people are expecting. And, even if better means only 6 wins or something like that, trying to find hope. And I just feel like you can't look at every other team and think everything's perfect with them and everything's going to go perfectly with all those teams. And so I look at the Jets. The Jets aren't usually a team that's interesting, but Aaron Rodgers is back, healthy. Is he going to be the same guy? He's 40 years old. Is he fully engaged? He wasn't there all offseason. Didn't he miss some mandatory workouts because he was in Egypt, something like that?
That's what he said. Yeah, who knows with him, but yeah.
Well, that's what he said, but he wasn't at the mandatory workouts. That's the important part. So, I wonder if Aaron Rodgers is fully engaged, and I wonder if he's going to be the same player. So I don't know that the Jets are just, you can pencil them in to win the AFC East, win 12, 13 games. I think a lot of people are basing that on Aaron Rodgers' past performance as opposed to what he is right now. Very talented team. Yeah. Garrett Wilson's, very talented young receiver. Quinnen Williams is one of the best defensive tackles in the National Football League. And so I think they have a chance to be good. I feel like they should be good on paper, but I think it's worth watching how Aaron Rodgers looks because he's the linchpin of the whole thing with that team.
So the Jets are really interesting to me. Yeah. I picked them to win the AFC East. I picked them to win the AFC East and go one and done in the playoffs. When it comes to Rodgers, and I've always been on the field, I've always been a big Aaron Rodgers fan. I like watching him play. The last time Aaron Rodgers really played a season he was engaged in was 2021. He threw for 4,100 yards, 37 touchdowns, 4 picks, won his second consecutive MVP. Then he has that 2022 season in Green Bay where he was fine, but also how engaged was he? And then he had the injury last year. So last time Aaron Rodgers really played, he was great. And what I mean by that is, remember in 2019, everybody thought Brady was like kind of on the back end and kind of cooked because he wasn't playing well. Then he went to Tampa and lit it up. How much of that was just he was checked out in 2019?
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's the case with Rodgers. Now, Brady didn't then go out and deal with an Achilles injury, and that's a lot to overcome. And that's what I wonder about Rodgers. I think he can still sling it, though. I think if he's physically capable of it, he'll be good. The Jets will be good. They can win the division, but we also know what Aaron Rodgers is in the playoffs, and that's why I'm not expecting them to go super far.
I just think you have to work harder when you get to 40. You have to work harder physically, mentally, everything to continue to not just play at the same level, but elevate yourself as Tom Brady arguably did after he turned 40. He played better at, age 39 and 40 than he did at, even age like 33, if you go back and, parse out the seasons. So I think Rodgers he should have taken the Tom Brady approach in the offseason where he's fully dedicated to football, nothing else, and then some, and then do even more than he was usually doing. And it feels like he did less. It feels like he's sort of half-assed the offseason, honestly. So I think it'll be interesting. I think if he thinks he can coast on his talent alone, I don't know, he's obviously one of the most talented quarterbacks in the history of the league. And so maybe, but I just don't see it at age 40. So I'm interested to see how engaged he is on the field.
A team I'm really interested in is the Chicago Bears, because that feels like as good of a situation a rookie quarterback has stepped into in a long time. You look at the receivers that are there, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. I love the pick of Rome Odunze. They have a good defense. They have a solid line. It's not great, but they have a solid line. And we know it's a copycat league. Does this become the model where now teams are maybe more willing to trade top picks and make these things multi-year rebuilds. The Bears could go one of two ways. They could win 6 or 7 games, and it could be growing pains. They could sneak into the divisional round and maybe win a playoff game. I'm fascinated to see what the Bears are this year because we haven't really seen a team built like that in a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point with the Bears' offense and the receivers that they've surrounded Caleb Williams with. And Caleb Williams, you and I both know, anyone that's watched him play, the physical talent is off the charts. The guy is electric. And so my question with Caleb Williams is, does he have the leadership stuff, the mentality, the makeup? Do guys want to play for him? I think it's fair to have questions about that sort of thing, but we're going to see how have to see how that plays out. But on paper, yeah, they should be a very productive offense, and that alone should make them at least a borderline playoff team. And I think overall the rookie quarterbacks, hopefully Drake May gets in at some point, Jaden Daniels too. I think it's been a few years since we had quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3 in the draft. I wasn't a huge Zach Wilson or Trey Lance guy going into that 2021 draft.
Right.
I'm high on all 3 of these rookie quarterbacks coming into the year. This could be a league-changing rookie quarterback class, and I'm really interested to see how all those teams do. Obviously the Patriots, but the Bears and the Commanders too.
You know that I'm the first person when people make comparisons to try to make a point that loves to come in and be like, well, you need more context, or it's not exactly like that, or hang on, let's talk about this, you're leaving this out, or it's a point of omission.
We're not big on context here at the
I'll say this. The comparison of Drake May and Jaden Daniels over the course of the year actually fascinates me. I think you do have a good enough base that's kind of an experiment. Both teams, I think, are on similar footing. New coaches, new front offices. Bottom of the league rosters, yes, the Niners do have Terry McLaurin, so that is the one big difference, but their line's not good.
Yeah, the Patriots have been sort of dysfunctional the last few years. Commanders have been dysfunctional for about 35 years.
As long as they've existed. The defenses are good, not great. And I just think they're similar, and it actually feels like you kind of get an answer. Is it the right move to sit the guy or start the guy? And now I forget who the veteran is in Washington. It's Marcus Mariota, isn't it? Is the veteran in Washington. Yeah. So I'll take Jacoby Brissett over him, definitely. But maybe they didn't have quite the level of veteran to really make a push. But yeah, it's Marcus Mariota. I do think it's going to be really interesting to track those two guys, and I do think it'll be a little bit of a referendum on the starting a rookie quarterback week 1 conversation.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, I didn't even think of it that way. I've always just thought about it people going out there saying, Jaden Daniels is better than Drake May. Well, yeah, of course. He was drafted 1 pick before. So, I mean, if Jaden Daniels is better than Drake May, I don't think that's necessarily going to be an indictment on Drake May. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see how both of them perform and how the teams perform and how their records shake out by the end of the season with the different approaches at the quarterback position.
One other thing I'm looking forward to, one other storyline for me, Matt. The kickoffs!
Oh, of course.
The kickoffs is going to be fun.
You'd be remiss if you didn't talk some special teams.
I think it's going to be a ton of fun to watch the way these play out. And I know they were kind of so-so in the preseason. I don't think teams are showing their hand yet. I think that comes week 1. I think you're going to see a lot of creativity come week 1, both on kickoff and kickoff return. It's more like a football play. It's more like a scrimmage play. It's going to allow teams to get creative. It's going to create explosive plays. The teams that figure out the nooks and crannies, not even loopholes, but the nooks and crannies of the rule early on are going to have a big advantage early in the season. I am really looking forward to seeing how the kickoff rule plays out.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see an uptick in touchdowns, if all of a sudden the touchdowns explode. And we see a lot of explosive returns.
But I think there'll be an uptick, yeah.
But I just wonder when you change the rules this radically, do teams sort of come out with a sort of a step ahead of the rules and you start to see it's sort of changed in that direction where teams are breaking through that first line of defense, and all of a sudden it's well, what have we done here? Now people are scoring touchdowns almost every time. I'd be very interested to see if it turns out that way.
They can change the rules through week 4. So if somebody finds a glitch in the system that's an automatic return, that it's going to get patched. If you're a really smart coach, Bill Belichick would do. If you have that loophole, you wait till week 5. When they can't change the rule. And then you say, well, no, it's set. It's done. No more changes.
Yeah. Didn't Bill recently say that teams are just going to kick it through the end zone anyway because the yardage difference on a touchback doesn't really make that big of a difference?
I think so, except if there's too many touchbacks, I think the league will move up the touchbacks. Right now,
that's how they'll change the rule.
Yeah, so right now I think it's the 30 versus the 25. They'll move it up to the 35 or 40. Because if it's the 40, the way some of these kickers are, now you're like 2 first downs away from a field goal. So at that point, I think teams will deal with the return. I would not be surprised if the kickoff touchback specifically gets moved up this year. Any more storylines for you you're looking forward to this year?
Yeah, the Bills. I mean, if Josh Allen is truly an elite quarterback, you truly want to put him in the top 3-4 quarterbacks in the league, he makes it work with what he has, even with the roster turnover at wide receiver and just the roster turnover overall at the Bills. Like they still win a lot of games. He still moves the ball and makes it work with what he has. Maybe it's a bold prediction of mine if I'm still picking the Bills to win the AFC East. You know, he still has Dalton Kincaid, who had a big year last year. I think Keon Coleman has a chance to be a really good receiver for him. So I think Josh Allen has a surprisingly good, productive year. The Bills continue to win despite that roster turnover. It's going to be interesting to see how that team looks, you know, with all the changes.
Look, everybody knows where I'm at on the Bills at this point. You're right. We're going to see what Josh Allen's made of because I think Stephon Diggs was a big part of that thing. He's now gone. They lost Gabe Davis too. They'll make the playoffs. I don't think they're going to win the division. I think they're going to take a step back. I think Josh Allen is going to take a step back.
One more.
Yeah, one more. Go ahead.
Texans. C.J. Stroud. Is he the real deal? Does he take a step forward? Does he have a sophomore slump? I think this is always a fun storyline when a team completely loads up in the offseason and people look at him on paper and say, how are they going to stop this Texans offense? Well, if C.J. Stroud isn't nearly as good as he was, and I'm not saying he is, because I think he is going to take a step forward. I love C.J. Stroud, but that's just something to watch because I think teams on paper, the dream team offseason sort of thing, I think those tend to go the opposite direction a lot of the time. So that's going to be a team to watch, especially since they're on the Patriots schedule. Like, what if they're coming into New England struggling, saying what's wrong with the Texans? What's wrong with Stroud? Like that's another way that the Patriots schedule could change over the course of the season.
One more segment to go here. Sports Hub annual Labor Day Patriots season preview. Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff, back after this.
You're listening to Patriots Preview 2024 on the Sport.
things for this week. We'll have bold predictions, rookie expectations, working on something with the quarterbacks. I have a mailbag up tomorrow. Dolph, you got anything on the way this week in particular you want to plug?
Nothing in particular except the Patriots notebook will be coming on Thursday. I'm going to try to do that every week.
So just like assortment of thoughts of the week kind of thing. There'll be you already did one of those, right? Last week?
Yeah, it was during the preseason, but yeah, it was focused on how they're going to replace Matthew Judon on defense, plus a few other topics from camp. But yeah, just covering the team and random topics up and down the lineup, getting ready for the week and looking back on the week before.
So if you want to check out what that is, again, 985thesportshub.com. We'll also have the Sports Hub Patriots podcast every Monday. We're counting this essentially as that. We didn't have another podcast.
I don't think we need a podcast anytime soon.
I think 2 hours we got in what we needed to get in. But starting next week, again, Sports Hub Patriots audio feed wherever you get your podcasts. That will be on. This show will be on there as well. So if you missed any of this show, you can go and check that out. All right, save the best for last here. Record prediction. What do you got, Dolph?
Well, I've already said throughout the show that I think they're going to be 5-12 or in that range, so I'll go 5-12. But to be fair, Barth, I went through their schedule to figure out how exactly I'm going to parse out the schedule. So I got them starting 0-4 and 1-6. But I think for the purpose of this prediction, Drake May goes in week 5, wins his NFL debut.
Oh.
They beat the Dolphins week 5. That's how they steal one division game. They beat the Dolphins at home week 5. Drake May's NFL debut. They all of a sudden start scoring, moving the ball.
Yeah.
He goes 3-2 in his first 5. They beat the Jets at home.
Would be ecstatic.
They beat the Jets at home. They beat the Titans on the road. So Drake May goes 3-2 in his first 5 starts.
Oh, but he lost to Caleb Williams. Did the Patriots make the wrong move, not trading up?
He hits the rookie wall. They lose to Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. They lose to the Rams. They lose at the Dolphins, which they always do. But then they turn it around. They get back on track. They beat the Colts and Cardinals in back-to-back games. But then they lose out to close out the season. We come out of the end of the season saying, all right, they're not ready to compete against the Bills, the Chargers. I think people are sleeping on the Chargers with Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh there.
Yeah, I'm not sleeping on Harbaugh. I'm not worried about sleeping on Harbaugh. I'm sound asleep on that one, especially with him back in the NFL.
All right. I think people are sleeping on that team. So I think the Patriots lose their last 3 games of the regular season. We come out of the season, 5-12, but Drake May came in, made some plays, won them games that they weren't expecting. And so there's progress there, but they still suck.
I wouldn't love that just because, like I said before, I want that. Like, it'd be great, and it sounds like Drake May's making progress there, but I want them to end the season on a high note. I do.
Well, what if those are close games, like high scoring close games, and Josh Allen makes a few more plays than Drake May? Would you feel horrible about that?
No, I wouldn't. That's fair. Then it's all right. Well, maybe they need to add to the defense a little more than we thought in addition to the offense, but Drake May's making plays, and you can get guys to buy into that. So this is a tough year to predict wins because we don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be for some of the games.
Yeah, that's the NFL.
Right.
The NFL is unpredictable. That's why I hate predicting records before we even play a game.
Let's say Drake May gets in sooner rather than later. And what I mean by that is week 5 or 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to, if he goes C.J. Stroud, they'll win 8 or 9 games because that's what C.J. Stroud did. And I don't think that Houston team they were better in this Patriots team, but not that overwhelmingly better.
They had a left tackle.
They did have a left tackle. That is one big difference. But they won, 10 games?
Yeah.
So if Drake May goes C.J. Stroud and he misses the first month of the season, they probably win 6 or 7 games. Maybe 8. That's their ceiling to me.
Don't you think people would be ecstatic with 8 wins?
Oh, yeah.
People are predicting
But
I think Stu's got him going 0-17.
This is a best case scenario Drake May has. This would be saying if Drake May is the greatest season a rookie quarterback has ever had, their ceiling is 7 wins. 8 wins. So yes, there'd be a lot to be ecstatic about at that point. Probably closer to 6. If it's a repeat of last year and the line's just bad, and we've talked about does Drake May go in early if Jacoby Brissett gets hurt because we think Jacoby Brissett's going to get hurt because of the line. And now Drake May's behind the same line. There's no guarantee he makes it. Becomes a quarterback carousel. Now you're probably looking at 3 or 4 wins. I think ultimately they come in 4 or 5.
I think Gerard Mayo and the coaching staff overall is the key to whether they go 3 wins or 8-9. If they bust through that ceiling that you were just talking about and they win even more than you were expecting, they're actually in the playoff hunt this year. that's going to mean that they were an extremely well-coached team, and Gerard Mayo has them, better coached than we were expecting.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Or it's a disaster and they win 3 games.
18 weeks to go. 18 weeks to go. We'll have you covered through all of it on 98.5thesportshub.com. Thanks so much to everybody who tuned in. Again, you missed any of the show, you can find it wherever you get your podcast, Sports Hub Patriots audio feed. Kyle Fabrizio, great job. Matt Dolloff, great job. I will be back Sunday. Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff is back 8 a.m. on Sundays. So I will talk to you just ahead of the Patriots Week 1 game against the Bengals. Football is back. For everybody else here, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you Sunday.
WBZ-FM and HD Boston.
Patriots!
It's an all-new season for the Patriots.